How gross was it?
It looked like brains. Which worked because then it went to Game Brain, right?
Right, Game Brain.
Well, hello,
Hey, Eddie.
hello.
Fiction Factory, Episode 2.
You're on a roll. 2 episodes in 2 nights.
Well, I mean, making up for any kind of lost time, that works out pretty well.
I guess
With that
so.
kind of production schedule, we'll be in season 18 by the end of the year.
Yeah. It'll be really frapping intense. Of course, Thursdays are going to end up being the not so regular thing for the podcast, only whenever, we have a couple of outs, like we did this evening. But that works.
It's gonna happen. Adulting happens.
Mm hmm. Not to mention, this is not everybody's career choice. Put me on camera. Let me stay there for 8 hours a day.
Oh
I
God,
mean,
not 8 hours.
there are
Oof.
definitely days when I've done 6 on camera.
Yeah, I actually wouldn't mind 8 or 10 hours a day. Just take a lunch
Well,
break in between.
I think that he's talking about being in meetings though, which I've been in meetings for 6 hours in a day.
Yeah, see, that sucks. I'm
Yes.
just talking about, like, playing
That's
games
when
and
you take the
chatting shit
gun,
up.
just like.
Yeah, straight
Yes.
out from Neil Patrick Harris, man. Straight on up. So, looking. Oh, uh, I got it. So, thanks again, Scott. It showed
Wow,
up.
that came out fast.
Yeah, I walked out into my kitchen and was like, "What the hell's this?" Oh, shit, it's here already.
There you go.
Yeah. Oh.
I watched our episode from last night.
Oh.
Yeah, it was good stuff.
I told you. I was listening in last night, and it was you guys had good rapport. I don't know if adding me into the mix is gonna help at all.
Well,
The wild card.
well,
That's a pretty good segue into what we're talking about today, huh?
yeah. Well, I mean, like we hammered out some points. I mean, they're there. We're going to talk more about shadows. That's all I actually care about in this particular instance, even if it's not necessarily in order. Do. So,
All right. So in our last episode, we talked a lot about the world of Night City and Shadows, and a little bit about the synergy system, right?
yeah,
This
brief
new
touches.
D10 system that, you know, really emphasizes training and character creation and having a real good idea of who your character is going to be. Because if we were talking to like how you've seen copy paste characters, either the same person who every system they're in they try to copy paste that same character, or the same I'm a fighter with 18 strength and a 16 con, and here this is what I do,
Yeah,
from dozens of players creating that same character in all of theirs every time they create a new one.
right.
But I think the strength of Shadows, which this is really probably the longest I've played in a system that was not made by Wizards of the Coast, um, just is in that character creation process. It's really unique, and you have to own that character. Like, you can figure it out along the way, but you have to own it.
Absolutely factual. Yeah, that character concept plays into it very deeply. You can't have um, a weak sauce character concept, walk into this and expect to have the game work for you. You have to know what you want, which I
Well,
think
you could, but it's gonna be a very bland experience, I think. You guys talked
broken.
about last night that someone can come in here and just play it like a game, and that everything's all about the mechanics and stuff like that. But that's not super fun for everyone involved generally.
Yeah, you can quote unquote win, right? I killed all the things, or what, like, but that's not, you're not going to have that rich experience that we were talking
Well,
about.
a story to tell. You're not going to be able to go back and talk about how we save someone by flashing them. Like
That's a unique moment I forgot about until now.
Well, and I gotta say, like, I think I had mentioned this before a few months back, but it took me a couple of months of playing this before I realized, oh, this was what Bill was talking about all those years when he would tell me some like totally wild story about this game he was playing, and I'm like, this sounds too frenetic. It makes no sense. Like, are you sure you weren't high when you're describing this? Like, this is, and then I play this and get it, 10 sessions under my belt, and I'm like, oh, this was that system. This was how
Oh.
you can have a werewolf wielding, a top hat, who transmorphers into the wall, or can fly or shoot, cover their enemies with napalm diarrhea. Like, oh, this is that game.
The way you were describing it just now, it made me realize that whenever it comes to an outsider looking in, it could definitely have that air of like, what were you guys like, LARPing in the backyard and
Yes,
stoned out of your
Lightning
mind?
bolt!
Yeah,
absolutely.
like hurling
We
empty
were- we all got
baseballs.
together. We had all gotten together over a weekend, a few years back, and he was telling me, "Oh, so we were playing this game, blah blah blah," and I'm just looking at him, and I'm like, "Uh huh,
It's making shit
okay,
up.
so they're weird up in Oregon, all right." And now I'm like, yeah, yep. Oh, I totally understand how that could have happened. I totally understand how that could have happened. So in this episode, I think we're gonna focus on at least the initial part of character creation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the things that I'm, when you talk about like, why am I talking about this? I don't have any credibility because I haven't been playing as long as either of you have. I heard yesterday that Scott's been DMing for years, and D, you've been playing for longer than a lot of people who've been alive, right?
Right. I think between D and I, we've got 50 something years of
Yeah.
Something to
RPG
approximate.
experience.
Yeah.
And for me, I've tried to play D&D over the years, and I never got into a group. And then I've tried playing Shadows a few times too. And one of the things that drew me to just playing this game, A, because I was friends with D, and so he was always talking about it, but very much a self-advertising thing. But B, it was always about, just what do you want to play? What's a character that you would like to do, to work with, and just literally, I think you guys even talked about it yesterday. There's a lot of archetypes in D&D. Like, you've got your monks, you've got your fighters, and you're kind of put into this type, and that's all you got to do. And of course, they've added some things over the years of like, oh, you can skill into a different tree if you wanted to do a kind of a hybrid class and stuff. But with this, D literally says, just come at me with any kind of concept you like, and we'll turn it into something into this game.
Yeah.
Yeah. As long as you have an open mind and a focus on a collaborative approach, I would say, versus a competitive approach.
Yeah.
Because if I'm trying to outdo you as two players, and I'm trying to quote unquote win or whatever, I might achieve that goal, but at the cost of everybody else having fun, right? But if we are able to work together, we could have widely disparate characters,
And we
but
do.
if we're at least working towards a common goal, and we're willing to acknowledge your character's stronger in this area, my character's stronger in this area, how can we put that together for the betterment of the story? And how can we make gameplay choices that are in line with what our character would do, even if it's not the most advantageous move to make,
Yeah.
right? That's, I have that with my character where I have specialized ammunition, and like Scott knows which is the best ammo to use in every situation, but Special Agent Leon Barrick, retired, is figuring that out still.
Yeah.
Right. So okay, this
You're
thing
talking
with
about metagame
bangs,
knowledge versus role playing.
right? And so I'll have him take those first few shots with the wrong ammo, see the result, and then switch.
Yeah. And react accordingly. Yeah.
Well,
And
you might wind up being surprised as well, because like I might say, oh, that actually has an effect, and you'd be like, what the fuck? Like,
right.
Well, I remember
So-
when I first started creating a character, I'm highly creative, and so all I did was looked into the game I was playing at the time, League of Legends, and he's like, well, what character concept do you want? And I was like, well, I want to play as Garen. And in the game of
Yeah.
in League of Legends, Garen's just got a big sword, and he's all about justice. It's like, literally my first character was
There are
like
worst places to start from.
my first character was literally a guy who had like 0 intelligence, and his only thing in life was all about justice. And and it's probably not PC now, but he was walking justice, justice.
Yeah.
But what's funny about that is that we took the character concept and he ended up making it so that a person could wield a sword that is like a Buster sword from like a Final Fantasy VII type thing.
Right.
If I remember right, he had a power armor with
Yeah.
like like not adamantium, but like a sword that was like technologically infused, basically. So I went for like basically a warrior kind of archetype, but then we teched it up a bit and made it so that he could actually like go toe to toe with things that had projectiles, like
Yeah.
guns. You know,
Yep.
bringing a sword to a gunfight generally is not a good idea, but when you're in full body armor, it makes it a little easier.
Yeah, we made him extremely defensible, and we made sure that the weapon itself wouldn't be like outrageously heavy, because there's obviously a point where physics takes over, and if you're carrying a weapon that's heavier than you are, you'll grab the sword, maybe you can hold on to it, but in the end, you'll just lift yourself up, and the blade will stay where it's at. You know what I mean? Like it's
Right.
just
Or rip your arms out of your sockets with
When
a
you first swing it,
successful
yeah.
swing.
yeah, with the attempt to do it. Yeah, there's just
Yeah.
like physics still has its play, but I mean like we still made it work. So the weapon was obviously not heavier than him, but
Right.
he had the powered armor suit to make it work, and he was capable. Like he took down 2 aerial drones on the New Jersey like beaches, because he like landed out of nowhere. He's like, "What's that?" And tried to figure out what was happening, reorient, and then these drones showed up out of nowhere. He's jumping in the air and hitting them with his sword. So he's like leaping 150 feet in the air and cutting things down with his blade. And it's absolutely ridiculous, but it's completely feasible with how the character was constructed. But we needed to have that there first.
Yeah. And that was,
Otherwise,
like,
it's just like, eh.
Right.
And that's with a very basic concept. I was just like wanting to play, and it's like I don't know, this guy.
Right. I'm enjoying this character in this other thing. Right, but that's a really good foundation for a character concept, right? Taking a character from some other work of fiction that you already enjoy. So from a video game, from a movie, from a comic book, right? And then you kind of take them and mold them and fit them into this new world.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
you have a Garen, and then you kind of twist that and make that fit into Shadows.
and the selling point that I always put out was like, okay, what was the character you always wanted to play but never got around to doing? Because either the system stopped you, or you just you couldn't find somebody who was willing to run it. And
Yeah, and I'll say anyone who's played any D&D, and I don't know if this is as true for other systems. I have created hundreds of characters. I have played 5 or 6.
yeah,
Right? Like I've watched the Avengers and then sat down and go, okay, so if I were gonna make Iron Man, he would have to be a sorcerer, and he would have to have this, and he would have, he'd need like an 18 here, and like okay, and then great, and then I'll watch another movie, and I'm like, ooh, I really like that guy. Okay, so this would be a rogue, and he would have like my dream of an Avatar party, right? Based on the Avatar series and running a D&D Avatar game. I was like, oh, this would be so great. But how would it work mechanically? It couldn't work mechanically because the only people who can channel the elements are these specific types of characters. Then we'd all be playing the same character, but a slightly different flavor. That would get boring really fast. Right? And so, yeah, I've got, like in my D&D Beyond character creation thing, I literally have 3 dozen characters that I've made.
yeah,
I've played a handful. And I think Shadows kind of takes you away from a lot of those limitations.
Oh, yeah.
If it's a strong enough concept, you can build it and then work with the game master. So work with you in our sense to make it fit the world.
Well, what's
Like, okay,
interesting about Shadows is that it because it encompasses mystical, technological, and real world all into one. You can mold anything in there because, like you were just talking about, an Iron Man type character wouldn't exist in a fantasy setting,
Right.
but you could definitely do it in a technological setting. But because we have the Unseen Court, because we have we can bring in from other mythical, realms that can exist in this world. I mean, one of our characters that's in our party is a demon, that we're fighting. People that have what is it? The technocracy is like a meld of magic and tech.
That's
Yeah.
the main global power that is trying desperately to maintain a specific balance for its own use. Yeah, the
But that's an
technocracy.
example of like how that, literally with this system you come up with any crazy ass concept and we can make it work.
Yep. And there could
And
be physical reasons for why it works and magical reasons why, or both, or whatever suits it.
absolutely, yeah, I was gonna say that, and there's a way of getting there. That I was born this way. I was cursed. I had this thrust upon me. Like whatever. There's a way of getting there, which I think is really cool. Now, one of the things that I think is also sets us apart, and we touched a little bit on it last time, was this idea of a campaign power level. Right. So you have this character in mind. It's the funny thing is I kind of see it like those horrible ads for mobile games where it's like level 1, level 20, level 99, and it shows that like level 1 is this like skinny little nothing, and then like
Yeah.
level 20 he's got like some cool gear and some muscle, and then level 99 they're like floating in the air with like this glowing aura like shooting lightning bolts or whatever. Um, and and your character in Shadows may not level up that way. That could be the insertion point, right? That's where they are jumping out of the plane into the campaign. Is we're doing a basic cyberpunk, and everybody is this kind of like street level, more mundane. Maybe they've got one cool thing or quirk that sets them apart, or they could be, you're literally battling gods and demons, and that's like where the game starts.
Yep.
That session 1 is you're jumping in at that power level.
Kind of like the having one of those cheat codes from old games where you can like start at
Yeah.
the first level, or start at the last level.
You Justin Bailey, you got the zero suit Samus. You're gonna jump in with 5 rocket launchers, like.
Oh my god. At least you don't have to worry about level adjustment figures like you would have to do in like Pathfinder and shit. Like, oh, it's like, oh yeah, you're gonna have to start off at third level, but everything's level adjusted, so you have to go like, burp, 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 burp. Like you don't have to dick with any of that.
I have no idea what you're talking about. What is that?
So
So
I've
like third level isn't third level, it's first level
no,
part
it's more
3?
along the lines of what you have to do. So if you start off as a specific character, I believe it was Pathfinder, and it's been a while since I've done it, but they had this thing called level adjustment where, and I gotta have struggled really hard to remember what this is, but
Our fans will send in emails and tweets telling us we're wrong.
yes, but
All one of
if I
them.
recall correctly, certain characters start at a higher power level, for lack of a better terminology, because of their race and the abilities that they have. So it's like even though they count as level 1,
Okay.
they are adjusted to a level 3 because they are obviously more OP than a level 1 character could actually be. So they had level
Oh,
adjustment.
Interesting.
So you had a slower experience at the first couple of levels. Like you had to clear this gap before you would advance because your character was more badass than he was supposed to be at start. So
That's like a reverse engineering. We were talking about AD&D second edition last night. Do you
Mhm.
remember the rarity of the paladin and the ranger?
yes,
That you had to have those high rolls. You could be a fighter, but if you rolled that 16 in charisma and that 16 in strength, like if you had high enough dice rolls, you could be the paladin or you could be a ranger.
yeah, and you had to be only human. Only humans could be paladins. Period.
Right,
No
only
other race
humans.
could do it.
Yeah, and so that was like we see like this prestige class sort of situation before they've established prestige classes, and now you get eventually each edition of D&D starts off simple and then gets to that bloat, and then now it's 5th edition, now it's 6th edition, like. So the idea of having level adjustment right off the bat, that's real interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, and this is kind of what, because like, God, if this is the reason why I wanted to like create this system in particular, or like at least make it possible to run in, because I've played in so many different types. I've played Riths, I've played superheroes, Pathfinder, I've played a lot of like hodgepodge games that were just like 1 or 2 shot, winner goes, and then I just kind of like forgot about. I kept the books. There was a lot of like White Wolf, which was like, Hunter the Reckoning, Mage the Ascension, Werewolf, all of that. I just started playing all these different games, and it's like there's got to be some kind of common thread that just kind of unites them all together to create whatever experience you want. And then the last piece of it would have been Cyberpunk 2020, because I never played that independently. I just played the mishmash that Shadows was and said, let's fuse this together into something a lot more cohesive than just this is this and this is that. And we're just kind of playing it parallel. And like, no, let's make it really, like, with your guys' encouragement, actually, with some of these finalizations, they've been coasting into that. Yeah, this is its own thing now. I'm trying to become less and less reliant on the super special spiffy parts of White Wolf and trying to honor but also disengage from the cyberpunk half of it and just make it all independent to this, because those systems are well established already, and Cyberpunk 2020 was in the 80s. But I love the artwork in that as a diversion. But but yeah, that's where it all kind of started, and then but that's taking little pieces. I cherry picked a whole bunch of stuff from a bunch of different systems, and was like, this would be cool here, this would be good right here, this would be good right there. It's like I like the experience from this, and that was the main rule for building this particular system. Was like, is it going to kick ass? Are the players going to love it? And is it going to be quiet enough that it can stay in the background? That was something I said last time. It was like, I like the mechanics to give the experience the oomph it needs, but it can't be the focal point. And it's
funny you mentioned that. I was talking with one of my friends and describing Shadows to them, and the best way I could describe it is like it's pretty much standard, like writing a story or role playing with some structure so that you can't just god mod yourself into the best situation. Because someone could say, "Well, you're fighting a demon." It's like, well, I'm going to dodge every ability. You know what I mean? Like I'm gonna be like Neo and see everything coming. But with the roles, it makes it so you have to deal with the consequences and figure out the actual physics of what's going on. So it makes you think about that. But I think a lot of times it does go into the background. I think the most mechanical we get is when there's just so many different systems that we have to ask you, like, what are we rolling on? But first we're saying, okay, I want to try doing X, Y, then Z. And then you're like, okay, you're gonna just roll this dice and we'll see what happens, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yes, especially with Riv. Your Riviera is good at doing the, okay, this is my end result. How do I get there? Like, I want to.
I have a very specific image in my head of what I want to have happen.
Yeah, you got
like how to make this happen.
The game it's very cinematic, right? We talked about that a little bit before. It's very cinematic gameplay, and so, yeah, with Riv, you're approaching a situation, whether it is like a locked door or some nether beast or something like that. You're like, well, I'm gonna kick Flip off the wall, flip him off, throw 2 knives, and then when I land, it's gonna be superhero pose, and the dust is gonna spell out "screw you." And then we're like, all right, give me a melee attack. Right, roll a d10. Let's add some dice to it. Like, it's just
it's really simple in that way.
Right. Well, and I gotta say, one of the things I really appreciate in the it fades to the background, the mechanics fade to the background, is nobody's got a +3 sword of demon smiting or something. Like, there's like, yes, you might have weapons that do more damage against different types, or armor that is more protective against certain types of attacks, but no one is saying like, well, can I get a +2 on this? Can I get a +3 on this? Like, that's not part of the vocabulary. It's not part of the parlance when we're playing.
Yeah,
that's true.
So, and you bring up something there that's kind of interesting. This is why the synergy system is called synergy, because you can take mechanics that work under an archetype specifically, bend it a little bit, and make an item out of it. And the example I'm coming up is Ivar's Ring. All that is the same idea as a vampire's blood pool, spending points to have certain effects occur, and then just making sure that they have a full blood pool. And he's got this ring that basically makes him a sort of honorary vampire without having to bleed anybody. and he just
Well, he has to pre-bleed.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's got to
Right?
he's got to absorb blood into this ring, but he gets every pint of blood is 1 point, but every pint of blood he gets a maximum of 15. He can spend those blood points just like a vampire would out of this ring, just like charges in a staff you'd get in D&D, but he'd be able to use
Right.
these blood points to like heal himself immediately and do all kinds of stuff with a limited rate of use in a round. Like he can do I think 3. I can't remember exactly, but he's got like a rate of use of 3, so he could like burn 3 blood and like regain 3 health levels of his own health immediately. But that didn't exist. I was just like, let's take this and that and this and that and this and make
He
a
said he needs some healing.
yep.
Let's figure out how to make that work.
Yeah, I just created the magical item out of off the top of my head, going like, let's take this because it's kind of weird, and we'll throw this in there, like, make it magical because that's what it is. And now he's got this thing, and he's super weird with it because he's always asking for blood and wanting to like dip his hand into liquids that he shouldn't be. It's like, dude, it's
Wow.
it's
Yeah.
you crazy.
Super weird with it. That's Ivar.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so this isn't to say that there are no underlying stats, right? So
Right.
that initial character creation, we go back to that kind of concept. You have this concept of your character.
Mhm.
So
When I first came up with Riv, I was seeing everyone else creating their characters, and besides Drew and Ivar, which is basically like Hobo Wizard, I saw lots of beefy people. There was like, I'm gonna take it all. You know what
yeah,
I mean? And so I was like, well, okay, I'm gonna make someone who, instead of being able to take damage, what if she never took damage? So I was thinking of someone who is really lucky, right? And I was thinking of movies of like who's someone who's always lucky and always gets away at the nick of time. And I thought of Indiana Jones. Because I was thinking of all the different set pieces that happen in those movies where it's just barely you see the thing like get right
the
grazes.
hat gets brushed, or yeah.
Yeah. And so I was like, that would be really cool to do this because the game revolves around luck already. And so I'm gonna choose like the first sentence that I had for Riv was female Indiana Jones. Like that's how I started.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I went in there and I was like, okay, well, let's dig into that a little bit. And so definitely, instead of an archaeologist that became a treasure hunter, I was like, okay, she's a treasure hunter. That's just in this world of shadows and magic and stuff. She's gonna like that.
She's woke, right? She know the veil's been pulled back for her. She knows about the unseen court and that
I don't know
magic
if she
is
knows
real.
about the unseen court, but she knows about magical items. The main reason for that is, I dipped a little bit into League of Legends again for inspiration, and her gauntlet that she ended up wielding was from Israel. Because I wanted a way to have something magical that she'd be wearing. But then at this point, this is like I think the third or fourth character I created with Shadows, and so I was able to make some more nuance with it, and so I came up with a background where as she was hunting, she found this gauntlet, and it was a curse on her, and so she couldn't take it off anymore, and then she's actually cursed to have to use magic and if you need to use magic, you need to go find magic, stuff like that. And I worked with D, basically say, okay, well, this thing is cursed, so that means that I shouldn't have really control over this power, right? Like I can do things with it, like fire off bolts of magic, just because I need to defend myself. But that's actually how it came to be that my powers I got when I used it would be random. That was supposed to be it.
Love.
Yeah, it's just conversation after conversation with D, like, and we didn't sit down for like 3 hours and hash this out. It was just like, hey, what if we tried something like this? And he'd throw out an idea here and there, and I'd be like, oh, I like that. And I really liked the idea of. So one of the problems I've had with other games in the past, other role-playing games, is that going back to what you said, D, about how the mechanics get in your way.
Yeah.
Whenever I've played like monks in the past, I wouldn't be thinking about how I'm going to tackle the situation. I'd be looking at it as like, okay, I can use a double punch here or flurry of fists. I've got one skill a day I can use here. You know what I mean? Like it's very prescribed what you can do.
Metagamed.
Yeah, I'm basically looking at my sheet and saying, okay, well, here's my tools I have in front of me, and at like a game, I'm going to just put, in my little cursor, I'm going to select that one, and then I click the button and I roll the dice, and it says yes or no, and then I'm done.
Yep.
And just like in a role playing game, like a video game, the character runs over and then rolls back and then waits for them to attack. And so I wanted to take that to the extreme, where it's like, okay, whenever every fight I go into, I'm gonna roll a dice and see what power I get, and I'm gonna have to deal with that. And
Yeah.
How did you guys come up with the range of powers that you had? Because when we initially started, Riv is introduced as this like gorgeous young blonde, kind of in like biker leathers, I think, with
Yeah.
this massive gauntlet. And so we're like flooding you with like infinity gems, like
Yeah.
infinity gauntlet
Yeah.
memes and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But you have this gauntlet, and then the powers were not like ice bolt, fire bolt, lightning bolt. Like they were all over the place.
Yeah.
To the point
That-
where I think we, the other players, didn't know what one of your powers was because you hadn't rolled it, and so we were like, every time you're like, okay, I'm gonna charge my gauntlet, and we were like, come on, get it, we were like super
it was the
excited.
10 at the time, like the
We're
actual
like,
10
get
on
the
the dice.
10, get the 10, right? Like, so how did you come up with these powers for it?
So
'Cause-
that one I relied on D a lot, because after I talked with him about what I wanted, I basically told him, it's like, you come up with my powers. Because again, this is going back to it's a well, you know what I mean, the powers that my gauntlet
Yeah.
would give me, because I was like, this is a cursed gauntlet,
right?
so I shouldn't be picking what these things are. At least that's
This
you
one
know I-
heals me. This one makes me immune to everything. This one kills all the bad guys. Oh no, I'm
Right.
so cursed.
Yeah, right. And some of them do end up being really helpful, like regeneration. But like, that's yeah. So D, that's a good question for you. Like, after we had our discussions, how did you come up with the first set of powers?
Well, I mean, because I know you're kind of a weird guy. It kind of helps that I know who you are, because this is also a character concept that I think was probably the most yours that I've seen in a long time. Because the other one that comes to mind before this was your
Normal dude.
heroic power leveled normal dude.
Oh, normal dude.
He was heroically normal. That is exactly
So
what it
great.
was. He
So
had
heroic being
he had
like
no
one of the
powers.
low levels of power.
Like he didn't have low level of power. Like he had all spread out. So it was spread out to a point where he became very mediocre. But he was heroically mediocre. And like we got into fights, and you just see him screaming. It's not like he would be trying to fight anybody off with a gun or anything. He'd be like, ah, like that, and trying to like dive under a car to get the hell out of the way. Like, and
Yep.
kept getting drawn into it. He's like, I just want to go home, okay? Like that was his whole shtick. But knowing that that's the kind of place that he was going to be coming from in some respect, it was just a matter of, okay, what are some unique things? Because I knew that he was, when he started to discuss it, it was going to be kind of like one power at a time, not really like, and because I'm using this really unique duration, which is per encounter, it's like my favorite kind of duration, period. Like I really love
Yeah.
per encounter duration.
It's almost like a per scene, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's just this. It's the smaller subset of a scene, because encounters can happen during scenes. You can have more than one, but the per encounter duration just makes a hell of a lot of sense, because you're all amped up like an adrenaline rush in the middle of something happening that's
Yeah.
crazy, and then when it finally ends, it turns off, and you're really going like, damn, and you're starting to feel like the weight of it. So it makes sense that it's kind of on like that. Not for everything, but for powers like this especially, I knew that we were going to have to go with that. So it's like, what would make sense for lasting a full encounter, so I can just say like, okay, this power is on. I don't have to worry about going like, well, how many rounds has it been? I don't have to think about it.
Oh
So-
yeah, I didn't even think about that. Like I've got powers that are good for, 1d3 plus 5 rounds or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm never trying.
Yeah. Well, like I said, per encounter is such a great thing, because it allows you to just kind of like, okay, is that thing on? It's on. All right, well, off you go. You can forget trying to count numbers, and the rest of that it's just fucking on. So I was like, well, I have to make sure that these things, one, don't offer up such a huge advantage that, it makes them psychotic. But I also have to take into account the fact that she's squishy, because she's not like amped up. She doesn't have the toughness to go into it with some of these supernatural characters. What makes her unique in this one regard is the damn gauntlet. It's the only thing that makes her available to play in this league. So other than that, she's just totally human. Sniper shot, arrow to the face. I mean,
You're done. Yeah.
that's all there is to it. So I'm like, what would be really surprising and run? So I just started going through what were some of my favorite things, like I said, I can draw on other games I've played. So a lot of these are like Regeneration, for instance. I come straight out of like Marvel Comics and the superheroes games. I was like, that one's fun, especially if it happens to be on at certain moments, and ironically, it turned on right when
Two or
she
three
takes
times.
damage. It was
Yeah.
like, and I had forgotten that she had it. And I was like all cringing, like, oh shit, she's gonna take a whole bunch of damage right here. And he's like, nah, I got regeneration. I'm like, oh shit, that's right.
The best part is that it wasn't reactive. I would activate the gauntlet right as the battle starts, or the encounter starts.
Yep.
And I was like, at the time, I was like, I mean, regeneration is useful, but it's not going to do anything flashy. As you said, Scott, I love the cinematic fights. But I still, with regeneration, you can be a little bit more reckless, which is what I ended up doing a lot more often than not when I had that.
Yep,
You
like her.
definitely have. You've done some of the, like a stuntman type. I'm gonna ride my motorcycle into a skid while I'm shooting, and
Yeah.
oh, I ripped up my leg. It's all right. I've got regeneration on. It'll be healed up soon.
Yeah.
Next round, I'll be okay.
Yep, totally reckless. Yeah. So
Yeah.
but these powers were sort of like kind of the common tropes you'd see with normal like mutants or like I said superhero abilities, because you've got regeneration, you have super speed, you have superhuman strength. Like those are kind of like the cardinal basics. They're all fun to mess with, but I think what makes them unique in this case is the fact that they're just randomized, because I have no idea which one she'll get. It's not like she gets to pick and go like, okay, this one. She's not dictating which one's turned on. She just gets, like now with it being a little bit more specific, and then having overload on top of it makes it even more funny.
So this is a good opportunity to talk about one of the interesting things about this game, which we've been talking about it for a little bit, which is unique mechanics, right?
Mhm.
I talked with Dee about some of the things I wanted to do, and then we came up with this idea of what if I had a random powers when I got into fights, right, or into encounters, and so after talking with Dee, he came back with this like, okay, he gave me a Word document and was like, okay, here's the powers you can get, and you're going to roll a d12, and then subtract. I think it was like no. At first, it was just the d10, right?
Right.
And then eventually we added on more. But anyway, you're going to roll a d10, and you're going to just pick one of these powers, and then it lasts for an encounter, kind of thing. And that was that. This particular power does not exist anywhere else in this game. You know what I mean? It's completely unique. And then on top of that, so that's already a huge plus. I love
That's
the
the
fact that
baseline. Is you're completely unique, and your ability to influence a fight is dramatically based on your own creativity and
Right.
randomness.
right, and I
That's our
love that.
base level.
Yeah, that's the base level. And then later on, just through the storytelling, I think you guys talked about yesterday how you're not a huge fan of how someone gets, they get the 3 experience they needed to get to level 3, and suddenly they're resistant to poison. Like you hit the certain threshold and suddenly you're just beefier.
Yeah.
Right.
Whereas-
Oh, I stubbed my toe. Why am I 3 inches taller?
Yeah.
And so we actually made it so that during the storyline, Riv upgraded her gauntlet and became more accustomed to it and using it. And eventually, we actually, during one of our stories, found another gauntlet. And so now she had 2 that had its own special power. You know what I mean? And so not only do we start with this unique mechanic, and then working with one of the other players, with Bill, he actually created an item to make it so it was less random, but within the story, so that I can actually, pick one of 2 instead of just one. Story that you were talking about, Scott, about I didn't tell anyone about my powers when I first got them. You guys would hear about them the first time I'd use it, and
Yeah.
one that I hadn't gotten was an Iron Golem. For like the first like 10 or so sessions, I never rolled a 10, and I kept wanting it. I was like, oh god, I want a 10. I kept rolling it. I want that 10 so I could get the Iron Golem. Because another thing that Dee did, and this is a testament to just how awesome of a GM he is. He went through the process of actually creating a character sheet just for the Golem and handed that to me too.
Oh my
So that
God.
like when I would He did it for himself too, so I can give him the sheet back if he ever lost it. So that if I cast or if I use the golem, he's like, okay, this is the powers it has.
Right.
But like, I remember that moment the first time she used it, and then, like I just threw the gauntlet out, and
Yeah,
it
like,
landed.
and we had no clue what was going on.
And I
But
remember, I also
that
remember when I first
golem
got the
is
10.
like
Yeah.
that golem has come out and been a game changer so many times, including our last session. Your
Mhm.
golem was, fifth man off the bench or whatever, like holding their own
The
while
zombies, yeah, or
while
the
we were
vampires.
fighting everything else. It was like, and where's the golem? Oh, just cleaning house over there, like just wrecking things left and
Well,
right.
we knew something was bad when it got kicked down.
Right. Yeah. And so, and
But
that
this
that
is an
whole
example
thing,
of that unique mechanics, taking
yeah.
that and then adding on to it. I mean, my Word document has been edited and modified so many times now that doesn't looks nothing like the original document. And I've got like rules of like I can have two different powers active at the same time. I can overload. That's another new power that like if I roll the same ability twice, I can jack it up like to
So if you roll
11
two
for like
sixes, instead of getting to choose between six or between six, you can double down on that one.
hmm.
Mm.
And so that makes it so that going back to the original concept of random randomness in a fight and being creative with my powers, I really like that because for me, I'm listening to what's going on, but I'll roll one of my runes and I'll see what powers I'm gonna get or what options I have, and I was like, okay, what can I do with this? Actually, just remember last session,
Yeah.
or 2 sessions ago, actually, it was one of the powers I had was Fireball, and the other power I could choose from was either using my Iron Golem again or Psychokinesis, which lets me control fire as one of its
Right.
powers. And I was like, I actually, D, you didn't see this part. I was talking with Scott on the side. I was like, which one should I choose? Like,
Yeah. And I think that's really cool, right? So this is, as you said, a testament to our dear game master who said, okay, we're gonna take your awesome rockin' concept of Indiana Jones style relic hunter
Mhm.
and then flesh out this background so you found this cursed gauntlet. Okay, great. And now we're gonna go save the town from the evil bad. No, now we're gonna weave that background story in so that it's this like Norse rune, right?
The Norse
This
Gauntlet, yeah.
this Norse gauntlet, and then we like bump into freaking Odin, I
Mhm.
believe,
Yeah.
and find out that there's a second gauntlet that's linked to this, and you have to go on a separate mission. And so that background that you had like session 0 a year and a half ago
Mhm.
comes into play and is an integral part of the story because you took the time way back when to really nail that concept. This is a character who relies on luck and randomness and is thinking on her feet and all that, and she's got this cursed item and now is able to control that a little bit more. It's still random, but you put the bumpers out on the bowling alley, right? Like
Right,
I
yeah.
can I can still gutter ball if I try hard, but for the most part, those parameters are a little more narrow. I have a little more choice, but I may be choosing between two quote unquote bad options, right, or two less than ideal options.
Mhm.
It's
Well,
not
talking about luck, the one, because I know one of the things we wanted to talk about is just allocation of points and starting to do stats and attributes. I think
right.
something that
The
is
crunch,
yeah, something that's not talked about enough. Like it's so integral to the system, we just like take it for granted now. Is the luck system, and just to talk
I
about that for a
love the
second,
luck.
the way it works is that you pick when you're building your stats, you just like anything that you're building, you get a set of points that you can allocate in places, and one of the things you can allocate is a luck stat. And it's not like other games where like, and when I'm saying in games, I'm talking about video games. Generally luck makes it so that like, hey, your crit chance is higher, or hey,
right? It's
you
a
have a higher chance
percentage
to.
adjustment.
Yeah, it's like a small little thing that, like, by and large, doesn't make a huge effect, but you might see it randomly. In this game, it's an actual one of your economy, like it's an economy of something.
Luck is
Uh,
very active in this game.
yeah, and so how it works is whenever you roll your dice, you can spend luck, and so the max points you can have right now is 10, and so you can say, let's say you rolled a 1 on the dice. Anyone else sees a 1, knows that's a critical failure, and that means, oh god, something bad is about to happen. Well, if you have luck, you can spend some points. By default, I think it's 3. You can spend points and re-roll that dice completely. And it has all of the same benefits of a standard dice roll, which means that if you roll a 10, which is a crit, you get to roll again. It explodes. Or if you roll it again, you get not a 1, and then it adds on to the one you rolled originally, and so now it's not a crit failure anymore. Or let's say that you're 1 away from a success on some roll. Let's say, for example, it's a will check, and you needed to get a 9, and you rolled an 8. Well, you can spend 2 points and bump that number up by 1, and suddenly you passed.
You'd be surprised how often that comes into play too, because you wouldn't think that 1 point would matter, but it matters.
It matters, especially like in those extended will rolls, right? Where we were talking, where you're rolling, 10 factorial dice, and we're like, okay, we're about to roll 80 dice here, like, and I need 2 more successes. Okay, well, I'm gonna bump either, right? You could have a success that gets defeated by a 1.
Mm-hmm.
So you can I'm going to bump that 1 into a 2 by spending some luck. And then it frees up another success. Or I'm going to bump a really close thing up to be successful. It's dramatic. And I think what I like is that we're getting better at using luck as we get more familiar with the system or mastery. And one of the things I've started thinking about is, can I pre-roll luck? Can I choose to spend those luck points in advance and just roll twice for this attack or something like that, right? Like, just knowing I need this to hit, I'm going to use that luck as kind of like, in the in-game situation to be like, I'm going to take that extra second to aim.
Right.
I'm going to like, whatever. I love this luck mechanic, and it is unique. I would say this feels unique to the system than the way it is used as points that you can spend.
And it's like per session is how that generally works. Although we sometimes have decided that the luck will roll over to the next session if we had if we have an encounter going on that we have to stop midway because we're not kids anymore that can stay up all night playing one game. We have to take breaks because we're adults.
and that adds a lot of tension. It adds a lot of drama. This game is very dramatic. And I think the fact that we collectively agreed, I don't know, we were in hell, I think, and like literal, capital H hell, right? And we had to call it in like the middle of a fight, and we were like, okay, we'd spent more than half of our luck. Let's keep that until the next session. That speaks to the maturity of the game, I think, even though it's still relatively new game. It hasn't been going for 30 years, but like the game, it asks that of you. Like, take me seriously. Treat this as if you could die, but you'll be rewarded for getting through that crucible.
Yep. Well, and you guys are just insistent on playing on hard mode because you guys have gotten addicted to the thrill, and that's
well,
that's the whole thing. It's like, I'm gonna chance it. Let's gamble. And that's exactly what it is. That's all it is. You guys are just playing on expert mode because you're like, nah, it's technically every session, but give me the hard shit. Let me have just a little bit of an edge to it, meaning that the luck doesn't pan out until the encounter's over, or you end the session at a quiet note, and then it'll restock the next session after that.
When we get a chance to take a breather. I mean, really, that's it. When we get a chance to sit down and address, like, oh man, what did we just go through? What did we just experience? Take stock of our lives, patch our wounds, right? So we've got luck. We also have these other stats, right? Like in the RPG, you've got like intelligence, reflex, stuff like that. But I think what I really like about Shadows is, even again in the stats, we've taken a hard look at that, and it's changed over the last year. We've gone through. So you've got intelligence, right? Your mental prowess, your reflexes, like your agility and everything. Then we've got tech, so your technical aptitude,
right?
Which
your
is
natural
your ability
talent.
to understand and interact with technology on a fundamental level. Which I think that's a really cool thing. It's not being treated like it's a subset of intelligence, because they're not necessarily the same, especially in a world where you have like netrunners who maybe are
No world.
intuitively interacting with technology. You got cool, which I love cool as a stat. Your ability to hold up under pressure, under pain, like resist torture, but also like to appear unflappable to others.
Yep. It's 2 in 1.
That is better than charisma. Charisma is
Yeah.
a lopsided stat of like, oh wait, I'm attractive, but also I can lie to people all the time, plus everybody likes me. Like, no, these are different things.
I just realized a little aside for tech. Have you seen the Mitchells versus the Machines?
I have not,
No.
but my youngest keeps trying desperately to get me to watch it. But go ahead
You
anyway.
have to see it. You have to see it.
Uh,
It is a really good movie.
Okay.
But
What is the Mitchells versus the Machines that I'm Googling right now?
it's on Netflix. And
Okay.
Scott, tomorrow when you have a chance with your kids, watch it. It is. I'm an adult and I don't have kids, and I watched it.
Do I have to
and I
watch it
loved
with my kids, or can I watch it by myself?
You can definitely watch it, but they
Is
will
it a
enjoy the heck out of
series?
it. No, it's a movie.
Oh, it's a movie. Ooh, well, Friday night movie night. That sounds
There
perfect.
you go. Well, have you seen Into the Spider-Verse?
Yes.
So it's made by the same group, like the same team
Oh.
made that movie.
Oh man, if
Yeah,
Keely had only told me that. If she'd
It has the
only
same
said
style.
that.
Well, she doesn't know.
Oh, that's a
I know she
fantastic
doesn't know, but if she
endorsement.
had said something like, "Oh, it's like this," I would have been like, "Let's do it," because
All
she
right.
like
Well,
she
I
asked
hate to
that.
call it quit on the podcast tonight, everybody. I'm gonna go watch. No. That's
Well,
a ringing endorsement right there.
It is.
Yeah.
That's actually what I first saw seeing commercials for it. I was like, that's an interesting art style. And then I watched it, or then I heard about the fact that it was made by the same people that did the Spider-Verse, and I was like, oh, say no more. I'm in. But anyway, you will find that one of the main characters in that movie would have a tech of 0. Like it is.
I
It
think
is
we
so
all
funny.
know a special person in our life with a tech of 0.
Usually our
Just a second.
grandparents.
I'll be right
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, so tech is really cool because again, it's that innate interaction with technology, which in the world that is set in 2074, tech is pervasive.
Yeah.
But again, it's not representing. I went and got my certification at the ITT Technical Institute. Like, it is the way that my kids can pick up. My kids, my oldest, yes, she can use a mouse just fine. My younger two, not so well, because that's not their
No, tablets.
method of interacting. It is touch screens and tablets and all that, and asking them to use a mouse, which really doesn't make a lot of sense now that we've got other better ways of interacting. You're like, yeah, that is kind of a weird thing, so they're, even though they're young, like that ability to interact with technology it's already there. It's they're digital natives, right? It's
Yeah.
that language that they speak. So then we got cool, right? You're unflappable. You just ooze coolness.
Yeah.
But then the flip side of that, as a different stat, which I really like, is magnetism. And that is another one that I feel is really unique to Shadow. I hate modifying the word unique, but it is unique to Shadows.
Right.
Because it is, I think you described it as your social gravity well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love that, like, oh yeah, that hits that's a good description. Social gravity well, how well you draw people to you or push others away, right? If it's a low
Right.
field, you push other people away.
Because a lot of people tend to think of magnetism as being only the draw in, but it's polar, so you can repel people as well.
Right. So you could be someone who is very cool, but unapproachable.
Yeah.
Like they could have a low magnetism.
Yeah.
And so they're too cool for anyone to want to interact with them. Like they're, that person's untouchable. I don't want to interact with that person. Or you could have the opposite, where the person is that like lovable, frazzled person that is like high magnetism. Everybody wants to be around them, but they are unhinged. They are a mess, right? Like I'm like, I know people like that who are adorkable or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like they're like, you need a hug. I want to hang out with you, but man, you need to get your life together.
You're just a mess. Yeah.
And then we've got mobility, which I think is a cool. I like that mobility is separate from reflex as well.
Yeah.
Because reflexes can maybe be that hand-eye coordination.
Yeah, that's your,
or,
how fast can you react in a situation, but not necessarily, because reflex
Right.
you would never apply to how hard can you run? Like,
right. This person can juggle. They must be fast. Like I never. That's a. And if right now we've had the Olympics going on. There are people you can watch the enhanced human attributes in all of these Olympic athletes, where you see this person, definitely couldn't beat me to the corner if we were racing, but they are a Deadeye. They can with a rifle, with a bow and arrow, whatever. They're hitting all of those targets down. So they're they've got one of these elements maxed out, and another one definitely less so. And then body, right? This is your physical strength, toughness, muscularity. Barrick, my character, has cybernetically enhanced body. He's got like an not an exoskeleton, endoskeleton.
Yeah, he had muscle and bone lace thrown in, and he had
Right.
the Myanmar put in as well. So like he's got the
Right.
full body augment all the way through.
So he can take a lot of damage. He's very strong. But then you can have that. What I like about body is it imputes some damage resistance as well. Right. So you're not just you can take a punch as well, which I think is really great.
Yeah. Oh, and I mean, like, you're nailing it on the head. I think empathy is one of the ones that's probably, what is it? Empathy is right after body, if I'm not mistaken. It's weird.
Empathy's the last of our
Yeah.
our stats.
I put this shit on paper and then I can't remember. Like it always happens like that for me. That's why it's just like I got to get it out of my head because it's just taking up space. And then I go and put it into the book. I'm like, I forgot all that. So empathy is the last one, and it's one of the ones that probably a lot of people have tried to utilize, but it's really not that its efficacy is always kind of small. But I think empathy in this game it really matters because it affects a couple of things, and that is one, your sanity, period. So the level of your empathy increases the level of your sanity, which is strange. A lot of people might think about it the opposite, going like if you're over empathetic, you're kind of like, eh. It's like, yeah, kind of. It is kind of like that, but you can only reach like 95% sanity. So even if you are the most empathic person on earth, because the difference between being properly empathetic and overly sensitive is in the sense that one describes your inability to handle situations as they come your way, and you have this emotionally immature response, and the other is going like, I understand from this incredibly spiritual level what is happening right now. It is a powerful sense of internal awareness, and that's what we're describing with empathy. It's not how sensitive are you, it's how are you, how aware are you really, specifically on the spiritual side.
The world.
Yeah, like how do you connect to it, and how do you see your connection? Like, can you really see it at all? Which is why it's directly linked to sanity, because the more empathetic you are, the more sane you are, because you're just willing to, you're aware of what the hell's going on, even if it seems completely out of range. So it's like, that's why. So when your empathy goes up, but the weird thing is that you can drop your sanity down by itself, and it will knock your empathy down along with it. So they relate to each other in that particular way, but you have a certain amount of wiggle room. So if you have a 7 empathy, you could have like a 79 sanity, but that could be knocked down point by point by point by point by point and make a huge difference depending on what you're facing. And sanity
Absolutely.
matters. And then there's like the skills that go with it, plus all the supernatural really. They exude this powerful aura which the empathetic can pick up on. So
and
yeah.
Will, we've talked about will.
Yes.
So will is a combined stat, so you can't put points into will.
No.
Right? Will is intelligence and empathy. It is that combination there,
Yeah, it's the
Um,
average of those two.
which is, I think, again, it's a really cool thing. So as one of those attributes that you have, that's not necessarily a direct stat. You can slowly raise it over time, but it is, this combination here. So you can't be purely intellectual or purely empathetic to have a strong will. You need that, kind
Yeah.
of two pillars to push you up.
Yeah, and it's necessary. Very necessary.
All right, so I think that's probably good for this session. And then next time, I think we can start looking into how these stats work look at skills and possibly advantages and disadvantages. Which really, once you've set your power level, you've got your really good character concept, and you've been allocated these points. Now you can start, creating that skeleton of your character with all of the scaffolding of skill points.
And
Yeah.
you can see that it's a very involved process with the game master, in this case D, because
Yeah.
he's the only game master of Shadows at this point.
the one, the
You're-
only.
The
You're
OG
the Highlander.
Yeah, well, I think it's probably the best thing to even stipulate on that is that this is because I get so much praise. I'm like, I don't know what to do with that. I'm just trying to play a game and have fun. I don't like nobody.
Stop touching me.
Well, it's more like
Feelings.
it's like I don't want to come across like I'm just absorbing brown nosing. Like it's just kind of like there's something I've got going on there with that. But I think that the real treasure of this particular game for me, especially at the start, which is probably the reason why you guys are so like about it. The whole premise behind this game is literally for me to collaborate with you. As a GM, I'm actually rooting for your success the entire time because again, there are GMs out there that seriously hunt the players as
Yeah.
an antagonist, and
They
they
want that TPK.
yeah, they really want to take the players down. They don't interfere with rules or consequences, but they create shit that is designed to kill them. And I think that is the wrong mindset, I guess. I just don't have, it's never worked for me. I've never thought, well, I'm going to be antagonistic to these 5 other people sitting at my table. And it's like, I'm sitting there going like, no, I'm supposed to be hanging out with friends, not shooting like not trying to snipe all of my buddies in the middle of a game session. It's not the point. But it's highly collaborative. Now, that being said, like, I encourage the creativity and the weirdness and all of the different character concepts. I encourage that because I want something wild. Because what happens is that I'm forced to have to deal with whatever psycho crazy idea that all of y'all have come up with and see how far I can push it. And, like the system itself, as I keep testifying, is just that it can handle it. It can handle it. No matter what you throw at me, the system can fucking do it. And I haven't seen it break once, not even a crack. It's always been able to sustain itself because it's highly adaptive. And then after that, it's this collaborative effort where I'm going like, I want you guys to play whatever the fuck you guys want, whatever your favorite thing is. I don't care if it's a cowboy like working at a gay bar who literally has a whip and uses a Bowie knife as his primary weapons and never uses guns for whatever reason. And it's like, I don't care if that's what you're going for. Like, I just want to see if we can pull it off. And then that collaboration goes into the game itself, which is why I drag the story and the rest of that in there. But that collaborative effort is always ongoing. And I'm wanting you guys to win, but the diametrically opposed part is that this world sucks. And these people are going up against shit that is nightmare fuel incarnate. And they have to survive. And I'm still rooting for them, even if they aren't the best people on the planet, because survival is the necessary component. And so they're probably going to be shitheels all the way through to the end. Some of them actually blossom into like genuinely good at heart type people in a world that is full of garbage. And that's the kind of shit that I like to see is like, what happens? Do they actually turn this new leaf and become something else, or they go all the way down into the rabbit hole of hell and stay there and just manage to rule hell instead of becoming heavenly themselves? Like,
Right.
You never know. You just never fucking know. So it's just, I don't know. That's the main premise behind all of it in terms of me, the GM, versus the players, etc. That's all I want to do. Just want to see where it goes, man. Story, story, story.
The problem to
Well-
solve. Yeah.
Collaborative, not competitive.
Yeah. Yep. And
Yeah,
that
I think that's the name of the game with Shadows, especially on the character creation side. Collaborative.
Yep. Most fun I've ever
Alright.
had.
So next time we'll look into skills and or not skills and attributes, but skills, and then the whole advantage disadvantage system. I think it's
Yeah.
another unique element.
I've always thought that the advantages and disadvantages really helps to flesh out your character because sometimes people just don't think about what they're doing, and so that's a preview for next time.
Yep. Yeah, so tell us what you think. Whoever's watching, thanks for being here, and I think we'll all be seeing you sometime later. We'll try
Like
and do more.
subscribe.
Yeah.
Like and subscribe.
More of them thumbs up.